In case any of you think this is sort of the stuff that is the byproduct of paranoia or science fiction scripts about how these kind of people work, here it is in black and white. I was a little bit surprised, I will admit, by how sinister this is, kind of expressed in corporatist jargon, but it shows what Palantir is.
Hi everyone, JJ here. Welcome back. Well, something a little bit different today. Usually it's about Elon or Tesla or Doge, but this is most definitely related, but it's about Palantir. And Glenn Greenwald did this an hour and a half long show, his usual show, but it was about Palantir this time, about the deep state and how they are well involved in the deep state and what they might be up to. If you don't know Glenn, he was involved in Edward Snowden revelations, reporting on those. He reports on the security state, the surveillance state has done for many, many years. And it's related to this. Not long ago, there's this New York Times article, Trump taps Palantir to compile data on Americans. We're going to see some of the clips from Glenn, and I'm going to react to it. I did a video about this on the Politics channel where I moved it over there. The Trump administration has expanded Palantir's work with the government, spreading the company's technology, which could easily merge data on Americans throughout agencies. And so there's been criticism of this from the New York Times and others. From Wired, there was this headline too: Doge is building a master database to surveil and track immigrants. And the danger is, if they can do this to immigrants, they can do it to anybody. So it's a form of mass surveillance. Now, of course, on YouTube, there are lots of people who report on Palantir, including this guy. He is part of the Palantir community. I've seen him literally hugging the CEOs. There's a lot of people on here that are very supportive of Palantir and what they do, mainly investors, so they've made money out of it. Now, I talk about the Elongelicals. So this is the equivalent, the people that report on Palantir, and they're a very buddy-buddy with the company, and it's kind of a lucrative sort of venture. He does daily shows. So with the backdrop of that, let's get into what Glenn's talking about here, being critical of Palantir. In the past week or so, he's had a video that has been online. Somebody tried to smear him, one of his political opponents. Don't know who. He hasn't said much about it, and we shouldn't know about it. I don't care about it at all. It's not my business, and it was an obvious political smear going on, which was, pretty alarming. And he has had this before. In this video, people from Palantir were threatening to do a smear on him years ago, and he does talk about that in terms of Palantir. So that's pretty interesting, and I've put that in this video. So let's get straight into it.
As the Trump administration now takes form after several months, there is no doubt about the big winner of the sweepstakes to become the head of the new privatized deep state. It is the firm called Palantir, first founded in 2002 by the billionaire Peter Thiel and the multi-billionaire Alex Karp, back then to capitalize on the opportunities of surveillance and militarization that they perceived correctly were presented by the war on terror. And they have now become absolutely central, one could say virtually omnipotent, within the Trump administration and its various intelligence and military apparatus. Understanding whether this deep state and surveillance state part of our government is really being reformed and constrained, or whether it is simply being privatized in a far more concentrated, technologically sophisticated, powerful, and sinister way than ever before.
So I have taken clips from this. As I said, it's an hour and a half. I'll put a link to his YouTube channel. He does the show on Rumble rather than YouTube. I'm not going to link to that because the algorithm probably won't like it, but I'll link to his YouTube channel. But go and see the full show if you want to. It's also podcasts on different channels, like 12 hours later. It has to be said that he did seem to be pretty supportive of the Trump administration coming in, because he was so critical of the deep state under the Biden administration and Democratic administrations. But to his credit, he's critical of any government. But I do think he was a bit slow to catch on to this, of what the Trump administration was about. I've said that they're authoritarian, and I think this is part of it. He wasn't critical really until recently, I think. Well, not this part of it. He's definitely been critical of other parts of it and other policies.
Technologically sophisticated, kind of newer version of the corporatized surveillance state was starting to gain power within the Trump world for all sorts of reasons that they had schemed and planned for, devoted a lot of money to Trump's campaign. And I think we're now clearly seeing the fruits of that, and it's time to really take a close look at exactly what is happening, principally with a corporation called Palantir at the center of it all. Palantir itself is a very extremist company in all sorts of ways, in terms of their vision of the future, in terms of the ethical constraints they do and don't believe in, and most of all because of the ideology that their leaders, that their founders, that the people who run Palantir and now run various parts of the surveillance state and military-industrial complex vehemently and passionately believe in, and obviously are using those powers to advance those beliefs in a way that I think has gotten way too little attention.
Yes. So he does go on to talk about Alex Karp and what he believes politically, that he's become more emboldened about speaking politically. It was thought years ago that he was more apolitical compared to Peter Thiel, who was a founder of Palantir as well, who's kind of in the shadow in the background. I've talked about Peter Thiel before. He was funding JD Vance. He's really responsible for where JD Vance is right now in the government. But Alex Karp really is the leader, the public leader of Palantir, and Glenn is pretty critical of Alex Karp and involved in the smear against him in Palantir. Karp had to apologize, or did apologize, to Glenn back then, which he talks about later.
An executive order issued by the White House and unveiled on March 20th, 2025, so 2 months after Donald Trump's inauguration, the headline of which was "Stopping Waste, Fraud, and Abuse by Eliminating Information Silos."
Okay, so this is where Elon Musk's involved with Doge. So really Doge and Palantir, or Elon Musk and Palantir working together, they're kind of frenemies, go back to the PayPal days, the PayPal mafia. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk both there together, they know each other, working together. And Peter Thiel was pretty far right. I know a lot about Peter Thiel. I've read a lot about him, his statements, his podcasts. He's pretty far right these days, which in itself is pretty worrying. And he has said things to the effect that democracy is not compatible with freedom. And I think what he means there is his freedom. So for him to be involved in the deep state and surveillance in this way is pretty concerning, I think, as Elon would say, concerning.
In other words, the problem, according to the new White House, is information is not centralized enough. You have some information over here, segregated over here, some segregated over here, some surveillance data here, some under this agency. And they describe that as wasteful, and what they want to do is to centralize it all under one authority. I personally would prefer that, to the extent the government collects data on American citizens, it remain fragmented and siloed and therefore weakened. Now, as I said, one of the primary impetus for this was to make sure that the team of Doge that was designed to analyze waste and the like didn't have any further impediments to their ability to get at some of the most sensitive data about American citizens. Here's how CNN reported that in April of 2025. Quote, "Doge is building a master database for immigration enforcement," sources say. Quote, "They're going to take the information we already have and put it into a system," a Trump administration official told CNN about Doge's plans. "It will be able to rapidly queue information everyone is converting to Palantir." Meaning all of this data collection, all of this data mining, all of this access to information is all going to be done through Palantir.
So deeply embedded in the government at this point, in lots of different agencies. They're talking of this master database where Palantir is helping to join it all together so it's not siloed for the Trump administration. Seen Alex Karp talk about how, we're just a platform. We don't have access to the data, as the way that other platforms say that, but they definitely have a political leaning, and these people are very political. So do we believe them in terms of what they're trying to do here for their clients, for their government deep state clients and commercial clients as well?
Alex Karp, though, in 2020 was depicted as this sort of unlikely, almost apolitical, cryptic figure. He has actually become, over time, his politics have become remarkably clearer. Now, I just want to comment too, as well, on this situation that I was personally involved in with Palantir's abuses, because this was quite a long time ago. This was 2011, 2012, I believe. But I do think it sheds a lot of light into what Palantir is, what it was even back then, when it still had a fairly good reputation. Story that article referenced involving me happened because of this. there were a lot of rumors that WikiLeaks was on the verge of releasing a huge and incriminating file about the Bank of America. And the Bank of America was understandably quite alarmed by what was rumored to be an imminent, extremely incriminating release of secret Bank of America files of the kind that WikiLeaks back then was doing regularly, not just to governments, but to other corporations. And in response, Bank of America hired several firms to help it strategize about what it should do in response to WikiLeaks' release of it. And one of the groups that it hired to help it strategize was Palantir. And a group of hackers were able to hack a company that was also hired called HB Gary. And the documents that were created by Palantir to help Bank of America against this WikiLeaks release were discovered and were disclosed. And one of the documents that were created with Palantir's cooperation was dated September 3rd, 2010. And this is part of the strategy to help Bank of America against WikiLeaks. Here's part of what they said, quote, "One other thing, I think we need to highlight people like Glenn Greenwald. Greenwald was critical in the Amazon to OH transition and helped WikiLeaks provide access to information during the transition. It is this level of support that we need to attack. These are established professionals that have a liberal bent. But ultimately, most of them, if pushed, will choose professional preservation over cause." This is what they were saying that they needed to exploit, that WikiLeaks' primary defenders, and I was the person they listed as one of the most, influential defenders of WikiLeaks and therefore needed to be targeted. They were saying these are professionals that have a liberal bent, but ultimately most of them, if pushed, will choose professional preservation over cause.
So you get what's happening here. Palantir is involved here. People at Palantir, not just a platform, with gathering data here. This is organizing some sort of political smear, a political attack. So this is the kind of thing that Palantir was involved in back then. And have they changed? Or is this the kind of thing that they're involved in? Not just in this building a platform for data, it's something more.
Mentality of most business professionals. Without the support of people like Glenn, WikiLeaks would fold. So think about that, what they were actually saying there. They were saying that they wanted to put people who are critical to the defense of WikiLeaks, the public defense of WikiLeaks, in a choice where either you could choose two things. You could choose to continue to pursue the cause you believed in, which was defending WikiLeaks, or you could choose preservation of your professional reputation and professional standing, but you couldn't choose both. They wanted to put people like me in that position, saying, if you want to keep defending WikiLeaks, we're going to destroy your professional reputation. We're going to find things about you. We're going to leak things about you. In case any of you think this is sort of the stuff that is the byproduct of paranoia or science fiction scripts about how these kind of people work, here it is in black and white. I have to admit, this was 2010, just about 5 years after I began writing about politics. I was a little bit surprised, I will admit, by how sinister this is, kind of expressed in corporatist jargon. But it shows what Palantir is. They were saying, we'll either force him to stop defending WikiLeaks or we'll destroy his career and his professional reputation.
So keeping in mind that they're really involved with the government and deep state agencies, lots of departments, and they want to create this database. Elon Musk involved there with Doge, wanting to find fraud and waste. Is that what they were really doing with the Trump administration, who is looking more and more authoritarian? This is the kind of thing that Edward Snowden was warning about, a tyrant getting hold of information and using it in surveillance. And Palantir is involved in this, with Alex Karp saying, no, we've got nothing to do with it. We don't see the data. We don't know. But this proves that they're fully capable of doing more, not just capable, really wanting to do more than this.
by finding out things about him, by leaking things, by launching coordinated campaigns. That was their strategy for discrediting WikiLeaks, for weakening WikiLeaks in defense of and in service to their corporate client that had hired them, which is the Bank of America. And then here's a reply from a Palantir person in the reply that says, quote, "I like the strengths and weaknesses highlights. Going to add those in. I'll also add a, quote, spotlight on Glenn Greenwald too," signed Matthew Steckman, Palantir's technology forward deployed engineer. Now, this did become public, and at the time, Palantir was trying to build this branding of its new corporation, relatively new corporation still, as sort of the, yes, we are contractors to the intelligence agencies, yes, we work with the CIA and we serve the NSA and the Pentagon, but we're the new version of military and intelligence contractors. We're the ones who care about civil liberties. And they were trying to recruit the top students from places like Stanford and Harvard and the University of Chicago by pitching themselves as, yes, we work with these agencies you think are bad, but we're the kind who do it but insist on civil liberties protections. And once that document got revealed, and at the time I was very much associated with civil liberties and probably the left, it was very embarrassing to them. It was very contradictory to the image they had spent a lot of time building. And so yes, Alex Karp at the time did call me personally and said, "We deeply apologize for what this document was planning on. It never got to the execution stage. This is contrary to our values. We hope you'll accept our apology." They made the apology public because that was the whole point of it. But I remember, of course, obviously back then thinking Palantir seems like a very sinister company. How would I not think that? How would anyone not think that when you read that document?
Absolutely. I mean, do we believe what they're saying now when this is the kind of evidence from what they're doing back then? How much have they changed? Was it just that they got caught doing it rather than that they were really sorry for doing it? And are they still doing these similar kinds of things, even though they're saying they're just a platform helping their clients get data together, organize data and all that? Is it something more than that? Because they do have political beliefs. And as Glenn says in this much longer show, he looks at Alex Karp and his political proclivities, which have been more and more emboldened over time. He's willing to speak out, and he spoke out against the New York Times revealing this database. He was really quite angry about it, but this kind of reveals something more than that what they do say in public. And we know about Peter Thiel and his political ambitions and political leanings from everything he's said in podcasts and in biographies and all sorts of things. He's pretty far to the right and I would say authoritarian. He does not even believe in democracy, as many of these far-right tech billionaires actually don't these days, and they're getting more and more buddy-buddy with the Trump administration, in this case, embedded within it.
And they've only gotten more and more and more embedded into the intelligence apparatus, into the national security state, into the deep state, to the point where, as a result of these executive orders and this attempt to make Palantir essentially omnipresent in our government, they have reached the peak of their power, the kind of fulfillment of that total information awareness program that even back in 2002 was considered too extreme, even though it was just a few months after 9/11.
Okay, so I'm glad that Glenn is talking about this now. I don't think he's talked about this enough. I do watch his show, not all of the time. He has concentrated on Middle East affairs with the US and been critical of that. But as he said in this show, he maybe is guilty of not concentrating on this. And he was pretty for the Trump administration coming in for the change. But now I think he's seeing more of what's actually going on and the people involved and what's actually happening, how it's turning more authoritarian, including from this data point of view and working with companies like Palantir. I'd love to hear what you think about this in the comments, and also I'll put a link to Glenn's channel and also the politics channel. I chose to put it on this channel here, not the politics channel, but if you're interested in politics, do go and check that out. I'll put a link in the pinned comment and the description. And right now I'm going to put a link to a related video right there. Do go and see that now. And also a subscribe link if you're not subscribed yet. Do subscribe to get more of these kinds of videos from me in the very near future. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one.